Hello there, and thank you for joining us. I'm Louise James, the Global Content Manager here at Morgan McKinley. Before we get started, I wanted to say thank you all for joining us. We've had over 2,000 people register for the previous webinar and for 800 people on this one. We'd love to hear your feedback after the webinar, so please feel free to send that to us on events@morganmckinley.com. So what will we be covering today? So how to effectively negotiate salaries in 2016. We're going to kick off with a poll. We're going to try, as I said, to make this webinar interactive. Thomas Drury will discuss the 5 vital tips in salary negotiation. A number of you asked us about the best time to start salary negotiation and the best approach. So we've also added that in as a career advice piece. And lastly, we'll look at live Q&A and try and cover as many as possible that we can during this session. For today's host, I'm joined by Thomas Drury. He's the CEO and co-founder of online data salary specialist on Monument.com.
Good afternoon.
Thomas has had over 12 years experience running his own executive search firm in financial services prior to Monument.com. We're also joined by Hakan Enver. He's the Operations Director for Morgan McKinley UK. Again, he's got over 12 years experience in financial services recruitment experience, having joined the recruitment industry from investment banking.
Hi there.
We've got Tracy Keevins. She is based in our Dublin office and is the Director of Inward Investment. Again, over a decade's worth of recruitment experience, and Tracy's mandate specialises in supporting foreign direct investment startups and expansions and dealing with the key strategic recruitment projects across the group. Tracy's experience is within recruiting senior qualified accountants within industry and financial services sectors. And prior to Morgan McKinley, she worked in financial services at management level for a number of years. So hello, Tracy.
Hi there.
Hi. So let's kick off with a poll. So you will be able to see the poll launch in a couple of seconds onto your screen, and you'll be able to give us your feedback. So let's start off with whether you expect to get a pay rise this year. What would be quite interesting to see is recently, it was following the launch of the Morgan McKinley Irish Salary Guide, actually, the journal, they ran their own poll, and again they used the same questions and answers as we have here, so it made quite a good comparison considering a number of you are dialing in from Ireland there. So we've got a clear standout winner, and I'm just going to close the poll now and launch this for you all to see. So you should be able to see there that actually about 56% of you said yes, so you lucky individuals, you're expecting a pay rise, so hopefully the tips you learned today can help you push that rise up a little bit further. 21% not sure and 11% no. When we actually ran this webinar last week, we had very, very similar results, and the journal, again, 46% were no, so actually we're quite different from the journal's poll there. So let's crack on. So I'm going to pass you over to Thomas now as Thomas discusses the 5 top vital tips for negotiating your salary.
Yeah, good afternoon again. So before we get started, there's just one point that I really want to make, which is that in my view, negotiation is often associated with confrontation, and I think that's a mistake, because demonstrating some strong negotiation skills will do you no harm, provided you maintain the right attitude and have done your homework, and that you come across well prepared, well informed, and you make whatever points you have to make dispassionately. A negotiation is not a confrontation, and in fact, companies should welcome someone who is capable of holding their ground, especially if that person ends up in a position where they negotiate on behalf of the employer. So the other thing is, we'll be covering both the scenarios where you are going into a new job and therefore negotiating with a new employer, or you're negotiating from your existing position with your current employer, and we'll be covering both. So let's start with homework. So you've got to be prepared. I mean, that's the overall message. You need to know not only what the overall market is paying for the job you applied for, but also the lay of the land at the company that you are applying for a job at. So until, I would say, 3 to 4 years ago, when we set up emolument.com, there was a dearth of reliable and real-time data sources for salary data, especially in professional and financial services. So that's why we set up the business, and we've now become the go-to source for real-time, accurate, reliable salary data in those sectors. And you'll see our name every week in the FT, CTAM, Financial News, Reuters, Bloomberg. They all use the data that we gather from professionals like you. It's entirely crowdsourced. It's verified, and I encourage you to take a look maybe this afternoon, not necessarily when your boss is next to you. You may get the wrong, but actually probably the right impression. So take a look. We give a lot of very useful data to the users, and we've got over 125,000 people in those industries globally using our service, and it's completely free. So please take a look. Now, you've also got to do your homework with the actual employer or employers you are looking to join a concern. So some companies will have a very formulaic approach to remuneration, and they'll have bands and grids. So there'll be very little room for maneuver on the basic salary front. Other companies have a more flexible approach. So it's really up to you to understand, and you can ask the question directly. You can ask your recruitment consultant. You can do your own digging, but you should know this in advance so that you can pick your battles when it comes to actual negotiation.
A couple of questions here that came in. Several of you asked lots of questions that really centered around measuring your worth, where and how to calculate. So Catherine in Ireland, you asked about where to find salaries in your career path. So again, the emolument tool would be a great one. It's currently up on the morganmckinley.co.uk site if you want to have a look. We also had that question from Anka, from Stephen, Shona, Mitch or Mike, Stephen and Phil. And what are the strongest and most authoritative type sources of salary data?
Again, look, we set up the business because there was a clear gap in the market. Check out emolument, and hopefully you'll find what you are looking for.
There we go. If you want to use the tool, it's up there on some of our Morgan McKinley sites and the emolument site itself.
Yeah. So the second tip is, you should not walk into a negotiation meeting or be on the phone to discuss a written offer that has been sent to you without being very clear in your head about what you are willing to accept. And when I was a headhunter for 12 years, I always advise people to think about 3 numbers. So the ideal one, and if you get it, there will be a large celebration dinner in a very expensive restaurant. Then the fair one won't put a massive smile on your face, but you would be comfortable accepting it. And the walkaway one, anything under that number is not acceptable to you. That's just for the financial piece, but you need to evaluate the offer in a more holistic way. You've got to decide ahead of time which components are more important to you. Is it the basic salary because you've got a mortgage, you've got school fees, you've got some living expenses that have to be met, and the basic salary has to do that job for you? Is it a performance bonus because you're very happy to be in a very performance-driven environment, and you can maximize your earnings by maybe accepting a slightly lower basic salary, but you're going to be making more money overall by having a bonus? stock or stock options if they're available and relevant to your industry, but also non-monetary benefits, and that can be anything from company car, pension scheme, health insurance, etc. The purpose of this webinar is to discuss salary negotiation, and that clearly relates to that very pragmatic side. But of course, in this day and age, the topic of life-work balance comes up more and more, and I really encourage you to factor that in. It will depend largely on your individual circumstances, your personal fixed cost base, your family situation, as I mentioned earlier. So please take the time to take the whole picture in consideration and know in advance what motivates you and what are your boundaries ahead of the negotiation.
Thank you, Thomas. We'll go through a quick poll there. So as Thomas mentioned, it's about learning what's the most important to you. So let's see and have a look at actually what is the most important. So please pick and let us know. So hopefully with the questions that came in, Sophie in the UK will have answered your question about non-quantifiable elements. I'll take another question here that we have. So Claire from Ireland has asked, if offered a below average salary as promoted from team to manager, how best to approach a raise once you're established as a manager?
So I'll step in there. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to be spoken about any promotional opportunity, particularly for those that are existing within a company, certainly for anybody going for a job opportunity with a promotion pending. I think it's at the time of that discussion, it's actually fair to ask about the compensation that comes along with it. Again, to Thomas's point before, taking out the passion and looking at the whole situation pragmatically is very important. It's going in, it's actually fine to ask about the rewards that come with promotional opportunities. There's this long-standing fear often with people about asking questions around money, and it's absolutely fine to do so, providing that the research has been done and it's done in a professional and corporate manner. Interestingly, actually, onto that point, I read recently there was a survey conducted by salary.com that revealed that 37% of people always negotiate their salaries, whilst an astonishing 18% never do. Even worse than that, 44% of respondents claim to have never brought up the subject of a raise during their performance reviews, and the reason being mainly fear. So if it's something that you're in a position to have to confront, it's something that you shouldn't be fearful of.
Thank you for that, Hakan. So whilst we were following through that question, you were voting, so here's the answer. So the most important to you in your remuneration package is in fact your basic salary level. So it's quite interesting there, the stats that we had around most people don't in fact go and talk to managers, directors in regards to their salary levels out of fear, but yet that is the element of our packages that we seem to prefer the most. So moving on. So back to you, Thomas.
So look, direct or third party, in an ideal world you want a third party involved. It will make your life considerably easier. You will have someone to depersonalize the situation. Instead of having to say to a prospective employer, I want, or ideally I would like, you can say, you can have someone else do that part for you. And it's very important you have a good relationship with the recruitment consultant based on trust. He or she should know your boundaries, and it's in their best interest to get you the job that you want at a price, for want of a better word, that is fair. So whenever possible, it's very good to be intermediated. But in the event that you're not, and we're covering this because obviously a lot of the mechanics apply. In an ideal world, you want to create some options for yourself. So you want to be in conversations with, say, 2 to 3 organizations, and let it be known subtly during your interviews. Now, you really need to do this carefully and tactfully, because it could backfire if people start perceiving you as trying to hold them to ransom or just as mercenary. And again, it will be very much informed by the type of environment you're in. Clearly, if your role fits within one of those hot areas, then you will be in a better position. If you're not, then you should tread maybe a bit more carefully, or you will have more difficulties in maybe creating more options because there are just not that many relevant jobs out there. But give yourself some options if they exist. It'll give you more confidence during your interviews, more mental strength when it'll come to actual face-to-face negotiation. But also, once you are accepting a job, you will know that you have at least compared the opportunity you want to take against others that might be available at that time.
I think on specifically with regard to you guys that are considering or in the interview process for new employers at the moment, one tip that I always advise certainly candidates looking for new opportunities, particularly when they get asked what kind of salary are you looking for, namely within the HR session, which typically comes at the end of the process, I always advise, certainly for those that are a little bit more fearful in asking or certainly providing a firm answer, is to actually deflect it back and suggest that through market research and through engaging with a number of recruitment companies and recruitment advisors, that they recommend that your salary should be benchmarked at X amount. And it's a good way often of having the confidence to sort of pitch what you're looking for without necessarily coming directly from you and making it sort of suggest that all you're in it for is really the money. So that's one tip that I can suggest.
How about you, Tracy? So we've discussed a couple of points there. Is there anything maybe that differs in Ireland, or any other points that maybe you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just see that question there from Donald in the Netherlands. If a pay scale is mentioned in the new job description, what percentage is feasible to ask on top of this? And I think specifically relating to Ireland, the only instance where a pay scale will be visible to a prospective employee is where it's public sector or semi-state, where they're obliged to. So in all other instances, you'd have an idea from either the third-party recruiter or sometimes not at all, just based on the level of the position of what the salary may be. As a starting exercise, and it's a combination of what both Hakan and Thomas have said, I would recommend that you sit down first of all and look at your total compensation value of your package in full. So that's taking into account the compensation amount for your salary, for your bonus, what it was actually paid last year, what it could be paid, what your stock options, if you have any, may be, and any additional benefits. And where the negotiating power comes from a lot of the times is on the benefits that you have that are sometimes hidden. So for instance, if you're going to an employer that doesn't offer life assurance and you have it currently, you can put a value on that. If you have additional days, holidays, with your current employer than the new position is offering, you can leverage that as well as part of the negotiation piece. But I think then when you know what your total value is, and assuming the pay scale is visible, as in the instance of what Donald has said, and maybe you know, you're coming in and around the same level as the scale, it really then depends on your experience, and it talks about what you're going to actually bring to the position and where your value will be in the organisation. So you need to align it to the company's values. So I think in saying that if you're looking to enter the top end of the scale, you would really need to be saying that you're on that or close to that already, but this is the additional, be it an educational qualification you've got since your previous review with your employer, which has added additional value, but you need to show your prospective employer where the value is and that you're adding to it. But I think as a starting point, as Thomas said, knowing your market value is one thing, knowing your self-value is the other thing, so what you're actually bringing to the organisation. And then obviously the sector that the company is working in is important. We would say here in Ireland, financial services and pharmaceutical companies, for instance, would typically pay premium salaries for similar positions by the nature of the sector that they're in. So if you're going into a manufacturing instance, for instance, you may not command the same salary as you would in financial services or pharma by virtue of the capability of the company to compensate to that same level.
Thanks for that, Tracy. I guess I'll just round this off. It was something that I came across last year. So as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, I work in the marketing department here in Morgan McKinley. So I'm not a recruiter myself, but of course work with all the recruiters here in the company, and came across an interesting candidate that we'd had whereby that particular candidate had asked for 40% on top of what was being offered for a particular role. Now, that's not to say that you will all go out and definitely get 40% on top of the role. But what was quite interesting about this particular case was that this candidate was based in Geneva, and our client was a big oil trader, and what we ended up looking at, the recruiter rather, is, as Tracy had mentioned there, so it's monetizing certain elements. So in order for this particular person to move over, what the recruiter did was come up with the cost differential to show the client what the difference was in the cost of living, tax, schooling, accommodation, and so on, and it did, and they even used an inflation rate, etc. So what happened actually is that the client was very happy that we were able to then say this is what the candidate would need to be paid to take on this role, and this is why, and everything was calculated and justified. So it wasn't just a I want, he wants, etc. There was that buffer from the recruitment consultant, and that particular candidate was taken on board. And of course, that results in a very, very strong team for the employer at the time. So let's move on now. So, Thomas.
Yes, play the game. Negotiation is a game. So please try to remember that, even when some meaningful numbers are at stake. So if you've ever played poker or watched some good players in action, you'll know how important it is to keep a straight face and your composure at all times. You make your point calmly, rationally, and without ever going into justification mode, and that's absolutely key. We all have the tendency and the temptation to negotiate against ourselves. So we'll say something, we'll ask for something, and it's not just about, salary and money. We'll ask for something, and then straight away we'll go into justification mode and lay out all the reasons why we think this is right. This does not help. So if after you suggest a higher number than the one that they originally offered, for instance, please shut up. Count to 10 in your head, if that'll help you, but you say nothing. Do not be afraid of silence. Yes, it will feel uncomfortable, but I would argue that a few minutes of discomfort against an additional 2, 5, 10, 20,000 pounds in remuneration for the exact same amount of work throughout the year is worth it. Hakan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's often human nature to suggest something that maybe you're not completely comfortable with, and then go into a mode where you might just find yourself rambling on trying to justify. There are certain situations where the justification is necessary, and we'll certainly talk about that shortly. But if you're given the opportunity to name your price, you highlight that number, and then silence is key.
What about in circumstances, so I've noticed that a number of questions have come through and came through previously as well. What about when you have more responsibility? So we're saying you have, by all rights, you can ask for an additional raise on the responsibilities you're already doing. How about when you've got more responsibilities? Surely that means that as you can show them, it's more also factual behind what you're actually asking for.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the earlier point that, if there is a promotion, it's fantastic news and you should be thrilled about it, but a promotion will always come with more responsibilities, potentially longer hours, more hassle, and more pressure on you to deliver. And so there is an expectation anyway that a promotion comes with a higher remuneration, and it's absolutely fair to ask the question. It's absolutely fair, and it's always about how you frame the question and the attitude that you have when asking the question. And so, look, arrogance isn't popular. It's not popular in the workplace. It's just not popular, full stop. There's a lot of talent out there looking for work. And so standing on the wrong side of the confidence-arrogance line is very dangerous. By all means, negotiate. That's why we're here today. Hard, if need be, but don't be confrontational. If you feel that the employer is trying to lowball you, just state your case calmly with well-prepared and rehearsed arguments, having done your homework, and again, depersonalize the conversation. I can't stress that enough. Don't say, well, I was expecting more, or, well, surely I should get more. No, state it from the point of view of someone at my level in X job gets, and then you state the range that according to research, and be prepared to quote your sources, again, without going into justification mode. But this is a rational conversation. There shouldn't be emotion in it, but do your homework, rehearse the arguments, do some role play with a friend if it helps. Just be super prepared to have that conversation.
I think with regards to the lowball, of course the emotion has to stay out, and the confrontation element is something that you must avoid at all costs. We noticed, Sarah, you asked the question there about what happens if the scenario takes place within your existing company and you go in, and is it okay to then justify after that? I think this is important. When somebody may be lowballing, it's okay to ask their rationale for why they are suggesting that in the first instance, so that you've got some sort of ammo to then respond back to. At that point, it's really important that you differentiate in terms of your justification, your need versus your value. So, for example, if you're sitting there trying to justify an additional 5k increase because the interest rates have just gone up and your mortgage has increased, then that's the wrong thing to be saying and justifying your argument. You need to be thinking about, before you go into any of those sessions, whether it's in the existing company or a new company, you need to highlight your achievements. You need to highlight all the things that you've done in your career to date, what value it's added, and then be able to reel those off so that the hiring manager, the potential new employer, or your current line manager can see the value add that you've delivered to that business.
Okay, yeah, and I really want to add one thing, which is more on tactics. Again, there is this notion that a negotiation is a one-block event that takes place on the phone or in a meeting room. That is just not true. What I'm urging you to do is to take control of the situation, and that includes the timing and the sequence of events. So it's perfectly okay to have an original conversation during which, face-to-face or on the phone, during which you will ask questions, take notes, challenge if need be, but very softly, and follow up with a well-crafted, thought-through email, which is perceived as somehow less confrontational, even though some pretty blunt things can be said in writing. But I really urge you to think about the, if you will, the array of means you have to convey your thoughts and your arguments. Also, because when you're writing something, you have time on your hands. You can really give it some deep thinking and come up with the right tone of voice, the right arguments. If the conversation face-to-face didn't go well and you felt a bit emotional, well, you've had a chance to cool down, sleep on it, and then say, following our conversation yesterday, thank you very much for your time and outlining the great opportunity. I've given it some thought and I have the following questions. So you're basically starting a dialogue. And so, yeah, I think that the negotiation is not just, oh, it's a 1-hour meeting. And anyway, they won't make decisions on the spot about the remuneration level, they will more than likely have to consult with other people within the organization. Line managers will have to consult with HR managers and vice versa. So none of those decisions are taken in isolation. So take your time, have a several-step approach, and don't be afraid to use a combination of email, telephone, and face-to-face.
I'm going to ask a few questions now about timing. So a number of you, again, we noticed this was a common theme that came up in the pre-questions, and also actually some of you were asking questions whilst we're on the webinar today. So these three here sum up generally the same sort of question. So can we tell when is the right time to negotiate? So I'm going to back that one over to you, Tracy. When would you say is the right time to start negotiating, and how would you then approach that?
So there are a number of variables. The majority of companies will have a formal review process, but assuming the length of tenure that you've been in within the role, let's say for instance you take on a position, you're 3 months in the role and you realise you're being paid less than other people within the sector, within your company, it's not necessarily the best time to do it. You have to demonstrate a track record. So I would say get some key wins under your belt, be able to go to your employees and say, this is the value I've added to date, and these are my plans for future value add. So I think it's important when you're approaching that you're prepared to frame your request based on your future performance as much as what you've delivered in the past to get that balance. I mean, typically salary reviews can be a year after you've started in the company and they're annual thereafter. However, I think if there's a case to justify salary increase, let's say you've been involved in a key project for the business, you're implementing a new system and you're a lead on that project, and you've successfully got through the first series of stages and there's more phases to come, it may not be a bad time. You've demonstrated the value that you've contributed to that project to date, and you're therefore going to talk about the value to take that project through to completion. It could be something like, it may not just be purely salary, and we talk about salary as if it's just basic salary, but obviously there's lots of different facets to a total compensation package. So it may be completion bonuses for delivering certain type of work that you're looking at. It may be negotiating additional leave if that's something that you're looking for, an element of flexi time. It may also be negotiating an educational course that you've wanted to do for a long period of time in lieu of contributions that you're making to the business. So it's really when you have a case to justify it and you need to have some significant events that are outside of what your standard. The danger some people do is they look at their job spec, they do everything that's on their job description, and then they go to negotiate their salary increase, when actual fact they're being paid the salary for the job that they're doing, and assuming it's in line with everything. I think it's where you can demonstrate value add and you have got a period of time under your belt where you've delivered that for the business. I think then is the right time. Typically budgets, and you can understand from each company it's different when they're being set. They can be decided towards the end of a calendar year and planning for the year ahead, but they're not maybe communicated until the first quarter of the year. So probably towards the end of a year is to set the expectations, because I think a lot of the earlier conversation about when disappointments are had, when people are offered salaries less than what their expectation, maybe that expectation setting hasn't happened. So I think in being clear and saying, if I'm delivering this and when I deliver this, I may be looking to negotiate an additional whatever it may be in terms of your overall compensation package.
Thanks, Tracy. You mentioned there about budgets, and we've had a couple of questions come in from Simon that really talk about, what approach do you take when you already know it's not a great time to ask? And a second question, really along the same theme, how do you adjust if the company is cutting costs and you know it will be a long wait for the perfect time? So either of you want to take that?
So it's twofold, really. I think it's, sorry, Thomas, I was just going to say in terms of knowing, first and foremost, even if that company is in a cost-cutting or cost-conscious phase, if you are somebody who's adding value to that business, or if you're in a key discipline that's maybe driving revenue or driving sales or implementing technology or developing technology that's key to the success of the business, I think that's one element of it. I think as part of that negotiation where you're looking at the timing and the cost associated with the business and what they can incur and what they can afford.
Yeah, I think there's also an element of it's very tiring from experience to swim against the tide. If you are in such a situation, my first recommendation would probably be to start looking outside the company, because it's not, if you've done your job to the best of your ability, you've put in the hours, you've been dedicated and diligent, and yet the company is in a challenging situation which may have nothing to do with you, your division, your team, well, I'm hoping there are other opportunities outside that organization which will pay you in line with your expectations and your worth. So start exploring.
And one other thing I would say to that is the company that you're with, if you've decided, as Thomas has suggested, you want to leave, the other option if you decide you are looking to stay is to negotiate either another position within the business at a more senior level, so to take on more responsibility in the short term to get that experience that you may not get in another company on your CV, so that you'll position yourself in a stronger position once you leave that business to command an even higher salary. So if it's short-term pain for a longer-term gain to get the experience that your current employer who want to keep you, no, they're not maybe paying you market rate, but will give you additional responsibility training that will make you more valuable in the longer term.
Great, thanks for that. I'm going to go through some of the questions that we've had live on the webinar here now. So hopefully if you've asked a question, we'll be able to get through and answer that. So I'm going to take this one here from Mason. So how does one compare salaries for niche industries or companies that use non-standard job titles?
I mean, it's more challenging, but again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, just check out emolument.com, because we have done a huge amount of work around taxonomy and how jobs are actually broken down. And so even if there isn't your exact job title, there is now, given the breadth and the depth of the data set, that you will find something that's comparable enough that it will give you a steer. But I really wouldn't rely on anecdotal evidence, i.e. conversations down the pub, or things you read elsewhere, because it's just very, very misleading.
I think it's worth noting that certain organisations are often structured slightly better in offering formal reviews, if you go through a situation where you are disappointed with no salary review, or the salary review that's been offered to you and you've offered your justification as to why you think it should be more, but it isn't forthcoming, then there's no harm if you are a little bit more patient and you are comfortable with the organisation that you work with to suggest that there's certain goals or criteria set over a specific time frame for you to work towards, and that if you are to deliver them, then would the company respect that further salary increase. So that's one option. If the company are not even forthcoming on that basis, then really your only option is to really consider an opportunity with another organisation, because really what that suggests is that they're not really vested interest in there's a vested interest in your performance and contribution to that business. And if we take some of the recent data, albeit more specific to financial services here in London, that on average last year, those leaving their jobs to go to new opportunities elsewhere were on average receiving about 19 to 20% salary increases, which often isn't coming from existing organisations. And on comparison, for somebody in a role for 5 years, their market rate by staying at that organisation is often slightly behind the curve. So something worth considering.
Yeah, it's just a shame that in this world, employers do not tend to reward loyalty and length of commitment as much as we'd like, and there is a premium for moving jobs. And if someone has been, I wouldn't call them mercenaries, but let's say receptive to phone calls and receptive to moving jobs, and has moved every 3 or 4 years, well, if you accrue that over a period of 10 years, well, there will be a significant gap between that person and the same person doing the exact same job who hasn't moved at all. I think what's really helpful when you have your annual appraisal, which often goes in hand with the salary review, is, as Hakan said, put some marker in the sand, get some clear deliverables agreed, and agree with your line manager, looking at him or her in the eye. Okay, so if I deliver all of those things that we've just agreed on, what can I expect from a remuneration standpoint, right? So there's a moral commitment from the employer to you to deliver that level of remuneration. Now, if you have done all the things that you'd agreed you would do and you've ticked all the boxes, and yet there is still a gap between what they said you would get and what is on offer 12 months on, unless there's been a complete meltdown like in 2008 or unforeseen circumstances, that for me is a breach of trust. And it should lead you to reevaluate your existing employer and, again, at least have conversations elsewhere.
I'm just going to move on. So this is a UK-based question and answer here that we added just because, again, there's been a few questions around confidentiality and disclosure. So we have close ties with employment lawyer Philip Landau, and we had a couple of questions around whether prospective employers can verify your compensation package. So I was quite interested to see the legal side of things, what employers can or can't do. So Philip Landau, previous to this webinar, gave us back the answer that prospective employers should be able to verify your previous earnings from your P45, which you will need to present to them when you start work. They can request certain information from your previous employers, but most are unlikely to do so without your authority, and in any event, your salary information should form part of data protection legislation and therefore not readily be disclosed to third parties. It ties nicely, actually. I saw from Fabrice a question that came in during the webinar. He asked, in regards to recruiters or headhunters, how can you trust them in terms of salary negotiation, because the client is the final, our client, the employer, is the final client and not the candidate?
I'm happy to take that one. I mean, I think the candidate or the person applying for the position is actually key, because if they're not happy with what's negotiated for them, if they're not happy and they won't accept the position, either one, so that nobody wins, the employer doesn't win, the recruiter doesn't win. If they aren't happy and they accept a lower offer and they go into the position, the likelihood of them leaving. And most recruitment agreements with any employer is they have rebate terms whereby they'll pay back any fees paid to them by the company if the employee doesn't stay with the company for a period of time. So it's absolutely key and fundamental to the relationship that exists between a recruiter and the person looking for employment, that there's trust there and that there's a belief that the offer made and accepted is the best possible offer for that individual, so that they were happy when they're starting the role, and that everything else then is dependent on the specifics of the job and not of the offer that they have accepted. That's my own personal experience and view of it. Hakan, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to it.
No, I think that's spot on. I mean, it's in the interest of the recruitment consultant, the headhunter, to represent both candidate and client very fairly, and ultimately, without giving too much away, the remuneration of the individual they're representing to the client, the way that they get paid also is on that basis. So it's not in the interest of the headhunter to lowball, because it just upsets all parties from the first moment. And I would advise that if you're in a position that you're willing to meet the headhunter and they refuse to do so, then there's question marks there already in terms of developing that trust. I think most headhunters, recruitment consultants, the trust comes from meeting face to face to really want to understand your requirements, what you're looking for, and that covers both opportunity and financials.
Thanks for that one there. I just wanted to touch on, so out of all the tips, the information, the questions that we've had today, how, if anything, does this change for contractors? So we've mentioned salaries, but how about day rates? Would any of the tips change at all? Is there anything else that you need to consider at all?
I think with contractors or daily rate contractors, the timing is more pronounced than it would be for permanent opportunities. So again, and I'm referencing Ireland here, the time frame to give notice, because typically a contractor can be self-employed, so they're not employed by the company directly, so therefore in terms of their notice period and what they're required, it's typically a week. So for their time and window to negotiate, typically they're negotiating a daily rate for a defined period of time. Now, if the terms and conditions of what they understood the work was going to be when they started changes by default of circumstances within the business to be more advanced or more technical or whatever it may be, then there is absolutely a case for them to go back and renegotiate the terms of that daily rate contract. But again, like what Thomas and Hakan said before, they do this with understanding from the marketplace of this new responsibilities that they've acquired through the contract tenure, that what the market rate would be for those and what the case is for negotiating a higher daily rate. So probably the timescales, when we talked about having proven yourself within a defined period of time, and it tends to be more an annual process or market driven on a permanent side. On a contract basis, it can happen quicker than that. That's really the main difference.
It also depends. So Tracy, I think it also depends on the amount of time you're contracted for. So how long can the employer will guarantee you work for. If safety, security of earnings matters to you most, then maximizing that number, then maybe you'll be willing to accept a slightly lower day rate if the person is taking you on for, say, 6 months. Yeah. And if you're negotiating, you can also say, well, look, framing it more as the opportunity cost of working with that employer versus another employer, because the market is so fluid that, especially in some, in some sectors, that they'll know there's a high demand, and you can just lose the right contractor within 2 days of umming and ahhing in a negotiation. So if you play your cards right as a contractor, I would say it's a really good market for you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to jump back because Anna's made a very good point, and actually it came up when we were all discussing this webinar the other day. So Anna has, let me scroll up to your comment here. So it came through in the chat. Regarding a previous question, I believe the P45 discloses already the taxes paid to date, and therefore a future employer or employer can work out what the salary was. That's correct. We were saying the other day.
Yeah, absolutely. Do not lie. I mean, seriously, just do not lie about your salary. It's the absolute worst thing you could do after lying about your university qualifications and your professional qualifications. Most employers in the UK use the likes of Kroll, who basically perform a battery of pre-start date checks, which will involve faxing, yes, in this day and age, still faxing into university offices to check that you got the degree you said you would, with the honors you said you got, and any professional qualification. So this is just a very, very bad idea. And don't even say, oh, I think I got paid 42 and it was actually 40. No. Before you answer the question, you double check, please.
I would agree. It's the worst sin that you can commit. I've represented individuals candidates in the past where future employers have actually requested screen prints of their existing HR system to show salary or monthly payments. So it is in the client, the pending client is able to ask, and if you're not able to provide for one reason or another, it does raise suspicion. Even if you think you're heavily underpaid, again, going back to the point of justification, explaining through research, etc., it's okay to ask for a higher salary than deemed normal if you feel that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely okay to say, I would like a hefty premium on what my existing remuneration is, and that's a perfectly valid reasons for being in that interview room in the first place, because you feel that, because you've been there for a while and this was actually your first job and, they're taking you for granted, etc., your remuneration progression hasn't been what you expected. And therefore you want to realign yourself with your peer group, and that's the reason why there has to be a healthy premium to what you're currently earning. Again, all of those things can be said. It is really about how you say them. And the last thing that I will add is that not every negotiation will have a happy ending, right? If you believe that, so you've done your homework, you've negotiated calmly, and they still do not give you what you think is fair, then just agree to disagree on the deal. And if you're genuinely prepared, and this is a bluff, but if you're genuinely prepared to walk away, and you do this in a controlled and calm fashion, thanking people for their time and just saying, I'm really disappointed that we can't come to an agreement at this time, they may actually surprise you with an offer that's closer to your fair or even your ideal numbers. Because people will have invested a lot of time, energy, and effort into taking you through all the various interview rounds. Some people will already have, gotten the internal approvals to get the hire signed off and negotiated the package, and so no one wants to have egg on their faces. So you're not in a weak position. So to Hagen's point earlier, it is baffling that so few people have a conversation about money. There's still a big taboo about it. It is okay to talk about it, provided you do it, which hopefully today's webinar will have helped with, do it in the right fashion.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to round off here with, I thought this was quite an interesting comment that's just come through from James. So in relation to what we spoke about a couple of minutes ago, he says, I would suggest that what someone is earning is not the business or prospective employer. As a contractor, my current remuneration is often by contract confidential, yet prospective employers sometimes think that they have some special right to know. And we'll just end there, there's a really interesting article that I read quite some months ago, and we'll tweet it out. You don't have to have Twitter to be able to see this on our Twitter feed, by a company called Human Workplace. I think they're based in Colorado, and I believe the woman's called Liz Ryan. And it's a whole article about how do you answer the question, what was your previous salary? So by no means lie, but she gives a very interesting conversation around what you can say, what she advises, and again it's on this topic about whether future employers do have the right to know or not. So that's Liz Ryan, Human Workplace, and we'll tweet out a link to that. So I'll end there. I want to thank our speakers. So thank you, Thomas Drury, for coming in from Emoluments. Thank you, Hakan, Morgan McKinley UK, and Tracy, Morgan McKinley Ireland. Thank you for your tip and your interesting insights there. It's been a pleasure. For the audience, thank you for logging in over your lunchtime for most of you. Some of you have joined us from Asia as well. So to view our upcoming event, jobs, career advice, reports and so on, please visit morganmckinley.com. You'll be directed to your local sites in Morgan McKinley Ireland, Morgan McKinley UK or Morgan McKinley Australia. You can follow us on LinkedIn or in Twitter. We look forward to receiving any feedback that you have, so you can send that via chat or email us at events@morganmckinley.com. So we'll see you on the next webinar. Have a good day, and that's all from us. Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.